Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama.
Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today we are fortunate to have the association of His Grace Venugopal Prabhu. Prabhuji will be continuing the Srimad Bhagavatam slokas from Canto 4, chapter number 29, sloka number 82 and 83. Haribol Prabhuji, over to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you, Shankar Shankarya Prabhu.
Ravilochana Prabhu, can you make me as host? And I think we should make Venugopal Prabhu as co-host.
Yeah, I'm able to share my screen, so we're okay.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay. So quickly, we'll start with brief Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Rangana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanatari Yamuna Tiravanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare जय राधाधव कुंज विहारी गोपिका वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधाधव कुंज विहारी गोपिका वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्र जय सुदर्शन जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय गौरांग जय नित्यानंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव ओम अज्ञानातिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरु दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम् ॐ तत्सत्। Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome to this morning's Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Sangha. Please accept my humble obeisances. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I thank all the organizers for this opportunity to meditate on these verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, and which has helped me refocus myself very much, and this is for my own purification that I am seeking. So I seek the blessings of all the assembled devotees to be able to speak in line with Guru Sadhu and Shastra, and for my own purification within my own realizations. So, thank you. So with that, we really wanted to start with today's verse. We have on the screen. Verses, we are in Canto 4, chapter 29, verse 82 and 83 are the verses for today. So before we start, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, verse 82. Tatraikagramanaadhiro Vindachanambujam Vimukta Sango Nubhajana Bhaktya Tat Samyatamagad. Translation. Having undergone austerities and penances at Kapilashrama, King Prachinabharhi attained full liberation from all material designations. He constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. There is a special significance in the words Tat Samyatam Agad, which indicate that the king attained the position of possessing the same status or the same form as that of the Lord. This definitely proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a person. In his impersonal feature, he is the rays of his transcendental body. When a living entity attains spiritual perfection, he also attains the same type of body known as Satchidananda Vigraha. This spiritual body never mixes with the material elements. Although in conditional life, the living entity is surrounded by material elements, earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and ego, he remains always aloof from them. In other words, the living entity can be liberated from the material condition at any moment, provided that he wishes to do so. The material environment is called Maya. According to Krishna, Daivi Esha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantide. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. As soon as the living entity engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he immediately attains freedom from all material conditions. Sagunan samati tetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. In the material state, the living entity is on the Jiva Bhuta platform. But when he renders devotional service to the Lord, he is elevated to the Brahma Bhuta platform. On the Brahma Bhuta platform, the living entity is liberated from material bondage and he engages in the service of the Lord. In this verse, the word Dhira is sometimes read as Veera. Actually, there is not very much difference. The word Dhira means sober and Veera means hero. One who is struggling against Maya is a hero, and one who is sober enough to understand his position is a Dhira. Without becoming sober or heroic, one cannot attain spiritual salvation. So we'll go over this verse and the discussion on this verse, and then we will go to the next verse for today. So before this, in the last sessions we have seen, basically here in chapter 29, what is happening, the background here is King Prachinabharhi has heard the narration of the allegory of Puranjana from Narad Muni. And in verse 29 at the beginning, King Prachinabharhi requests Narad Muni to actually explain the allegory to him in detail because he confesses that in his conditioned state where he's attached to a lot of fruitive activities, he is unable to completely understand the purport. of the entire allegory that was narrated to him in all these previous chapters. So Narad Muni, out of his kindness and compassion, again in detail, he explains various aspects of the allegory of the King Puranjana's story. So where a lot of analogies were given, and all the comparisons that he had made to a conditioned soul, it is cryptic. So even if uh, we listen to just the verses and verses of the earlier chapters, it definitely our position would not be even as much as King Prachinabhari's. But due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, where at each verse, and we had the translation and purport, we were able to understand. Before we came to this chapter, we were able to understand the analogies and the purports. But when we place ourselves in King Prachinabhari's position, we understand the relevance of this particular chapter, and we see it's kind of a summary, and it is in line with other great conversations, like even if you see the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna in the beginning says, gives the transcendental knowledge, and then Arjuna, not the same, but on similar lines, asks him further questions and confesses that he is unable to understand. And then Krishna threadbare explains the transcendental knowledge. So that is what has happened here in the preceding chapters. And even in this, preceding verses of this chapter. And this has resulted in change of heart of King Prachinabhari. So that is, we know the power of transcendental knowledge, where it results in a change of heart, even in the most tightly bound living entity. Like in our own journeys, we have seen how by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, by regularly hearing, although for each of us it is at a different pace, there is slow but steady slackening of the hard knots in our heart, hard knot of that binds us to this material world. So a similar, so I was just reflecting how the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam to slacken the knots of that bind us to this material world. It is being demonstrated in this in Puranjana's allegory and King Prachinabhari's resultant change in his consciousness. So after this, that happened, we saw in the preceding verses in the King Prachinabhari immediately, as they say, the light bulb went on. So until then, it is not easy. But once it went on, he immediately understood what he is supposed to do, and he did not wait for his all his sons, prachetas, who were executing austerities after being blessed by Lord Shiva. He did not wait for them. He just gave instructions to his ministers to pass on to his sons for them to protect the citizens. We saw in yesterday's verses. Protecting the citizens meant ensuring that the Varnashrama system is properly in place, so that people are protected in their own Varna and Ashrama, and they can execute their duties and gradually progress in their spiritual lives. And without that structure, really anything any sort of orderly management of any structure, even if it's a country or even if it's a family or a unit. It is not easy. So that's what we saw in yesterday's verse, and where we saw that how immediately after understanding the purport, Prachine Bhari took up pure devotional service. He went to the Kapila Ashrama to execute austerities. Kapila Ashrama is in today's times the Ganga Sagar area. Even today, it is very popular, particularly during Makar Sankranti. A lot of devotees gather there, to perform various austerities. So the Prachine Bhari, in this verse, we see King Prachine Bhari has explained what happened to King Prachine Bhari after he took up executing austerities and penances. So after having undergone austerities and penances, he attained full liberation from material designations. And then he confidently engaged in transcendental loving service and attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is important here. The Prabhupada begins the purport with that significant verse, Tat Samyatam Agat, which so basically one attains the position, same status as the form of the Lord, that is the Sachidananda Vigraha form of the Lord. Qualitatively, the living entity attains that, and it's not quantitatively. So Prabhupada is trying to here again prove that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a person. So we see in all his lectures and his purports, at every step, Prabhupada is finds any given opportunity, he makes sure he reminds us that our position is that of spirit soul. We're not the body, we are the soul. And he establishes the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person, and it is our constitutional position to be always engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and only when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is understood as a person are we able to develop that relationship, and by our entering service. In the impersonal feature, it is not possible to develop that relationship. So that's what here Prabhupada is emphasizing. The impersonal feature is the rays of the transcendental body. So we know from Srimad Bhagavatam that there are 3 levels of understanding the Supreme. The impersonal feature is not incorrect. Like we know, a majority of spiritualists in India particularly have the impersonal conception. So it is not a wrong conception, but it is an incomplete conception. That is what Prabhupada emphasizes in his purports. And it is in this way it is easier to even have a conversation with those impersonalists to establish that what they are doing, they have a right understanding of the Supreme Lord, but not the complete understanding, because impersonal feature is also there, but it is not a complete. Like we know the verse where we know that the Supreme Lord is understood in, the absolute truth is understood in 3 levels, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahmeti, Bhagavan, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaneti Shabdete. So that is the verse we often hear Prabhupada quotes, which is from the Bhagavatam, the 3 levels. So when living entity attains spiritual perfection, so when he attains the same type of body known as Sachidananda Vigraha. So this, so here this establishes that there are 3 levels, and one needs to aspire for the personal relationship with the absolute truth and not be limited to and the understanding of the Supreme Lord through only his the rays of his transcendental body, or even as a Paramatma in the heart, because only in the like we know in any relationship, it helps us to render service when we have the personal connection. In an impersonal connection, although we may think and meditate and have good intentions, but really the relationship does not get established or flourish. So to render service, the personal conception is very, very important. So here, through the transcendental knowledge received from Narad Muni, King Prachina Bhari did not have any doubts of how to direct his austerities and penances. See, sometimes we see there are many spiritualists, they execute a lot of austerities and penances, but the goal is when it is not clear, they don't get the topmost benefit. But here King Prachinavari, because he heard from the authorized source, Narad Muni himself, so he was in a safe position. So here in the purport, Prabhupada, with regard to austerities, one of the things one needs to understand is that the austerities and penances that one engages in should eventually strengthen one's practice of devotional service. Like how here we see when Prachina Bhari executed austerities and penances, it resulted in him constantly being engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord. It was not the austerities and penances were means to that end and not an end in themselves. So one lesson for here is all our austerities, particularly we need to be careful as Vaishnavas, should be directed towards strengthening our hearing and chanting, and also the other 7 processes of devotional service. As long as any austerities or penance is strengthening our practice of the 9 processes, starting with hearing and chanting, they are something to pursue. So, like for example, I was just reflecting, like people do a lot of, a lot of endeavors, like austerities, for particularly in today's times, we see after a certain level, they physically try to exert themselves, challenge themselves, like some 21-day challenge, that day challenge, this many. They will run so long, or walk, or they will do so many Surya Namaskars. Whatever these type of physically exerting, climbing mountains, all these. Now, one may have inclinations to do all this, but if eventually, I'm just giving some examples that come to mind. If they are not leading one to strengthen one's hearing and chanting and the 9 process of devotional service, it's a clear, easy way to assess whether we should be pursuing that further. I remember many years ago when I just was beginning my association of devotees, was working abroad in US, and I had this already. I was looking and for something I didn't know. I didn't have clarity, but I had taken up running. So I used to run half marathons. and it required a lot of endeavor to practice. But when we don't have any higher goal, that itself seemed high. And yeah, it went on, and then I met devotees in the process as I was going through this phase, and started hearing, associating with devotees. But I also met one devotee who was also into running, and he would. Many years later, I found, although I didn't pursue that further because I realized. Uh, Particularly practically, it was not possible to do all that and also give time to for Krishna conscious activities. Although health can be taken care with much more simpler ways. So I got this realization, and I stopped that over endeavor thanks to Devotees Association. But I saw there were some devotees who would run marathons, and they would wear Hare Krishna on their like on their T-shirt, and one devotee particularly. So it is a good initial stage, but I realized, thanks to association of devotees, otherwise it's easy to say, oh, okay, then I can still do that. I can just run for Krishna, It is good, but it is more a initial stage, because when you see the endeavor involved to be able to run for that one marathon, you need to practice many hours every day. You need to focus on so many other things, give so much time for that preparation, that is it eventually really helping one strengthen their devotional service activities. Practically, if you see it does not. It may be like a good show that, I am putting in the name of Krishna, but we are not having that much influence to really change people's heart through that. So we should. I was just reflecting. It may be on the initial stage, like we see Yat Karoshi, Yat Dashnashi, Yat Karoshi, so whatever you do it as an offering unto me. At that platform, yes, this is good, but one has to move on from there and more. It's like loosely connecting one's activity to Krishna versus engaging in activities which strengthen our connection more strongly. So over a period of recently, I heard that the devotee, I mean, this is all anecdotal, it should not be taken, but that devotee is not very much really connected still. He was very active in many festivals and dramas, this and that, but somehow he's drifted away from association with various circumstances in life. So these may be anecdotal, but it just strengthens what we have heard from Prabhupada and the senior devotees, how we need to really be guided, even in executing our austerities. In the name of, we cannot speculate and say we are doing this for Krishna, because the check for us is that whether it is really helping me strengthen my hearing and chanting and desire to associate and execute the practice of devotional service. So that's what I wanted to highlight. How, because Pratyana, he heard from the authoritative source and surrendered to those instructions, and those austerities and penances that he performed also were directed towards him, strengthening his engagement in transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So that's what that's what led him to, I think, the same type of body that Satchidananda Vigraha found. So another point Prabhupada mentions that this spiritual body never mixes with material elements. So although in conditional life, living entity is surrounded by all these material elements, and here Prabhupada includes not just the 5 elements, but intelligence and ego also. And one can remain aloof from all these material elements when one achieves the Satchidananda Vigraha body. So here, an interesting thing Prabhupada mentions is that one can, a living entity can achieve this type of liberation from material condition at any moment, provided he wishes to do so. So we know, Prabhupada quotes this verse that really the living entity is, as long as he is surrendered to the Supreme Lord, he is able to cross over the material ocean. Otherwise, it is really hard to fight against this material energy, the Maya. So, so this aspect of any moment is we can recall many times. We have heard Prabhupada was asked, Swamiji, how long it takes for one to become Krishna conscious, and his reply was within a moment. So now, how to understand that was that it really here, as long as one has the right conception in all his activities and directed towards pleasing the Supreme Lord, then immediately one is in a liberated state. So that also Prabhupada quotes the other verse, the Sagunan Samati Tetan. So it begins with Mamchayo Vicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samati Tetan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So in that verse, basically it's saying one who executes Avyabichari Bhakti, that is one-pointed Bhakti to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one immediately reaches the Brahma Bhuta platform. So Brahma Bhuta platform is not it's kind of a beginning stage for one to deepen one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. So from the Jiva Bhuta platform to go to the Brahma Bhuta platform, the process here is explained that one just has to execute Avyabichari Bhakti. So here Prabhupada says, when living entity engages in transcendental loving service of the Lord, he immediately attains freedom from all material conditions. So it is as simple as that. And also, if we reflect, it's as complex as that, because Avyabichari Bhakti, is a goal that we need to aspire for, because when we do that, in the process, we will, one is we are on the right track, as long as we are trying to achieve that goal. And then we can be sure that by constantly endeavoring to reach that goal, we will be purified, and definitely we will reach that state of being liberated from all material conditions, so that we can experience the higher truths and higher truths of and experience of that relationship with the Supreme Lord. So as far as this momentary that how long it takes, the moment we had heard of the pastime of Katwanga Maharaj, where he fought with the demigods and asked to ask a boon. He told he just wanted to know how long he has left, and once he knew that he had just a moment left, he came back from the heavenly realm and immediately started executing pure devotional service, and he perfected his life and went back to Godhead. So I just wanted to remember that, because here we have heard Prabhupada mentions the moment, and he quotes the Katwanga Maharaj pastime in other purports also. So another important thing here in the sloka is Vimukta Sango Anubhajan. Anubhajan means here continuously engaging in devotional service. So that is one aspect Prabhupada is emphasizing. Anubhajan, like we have for this session, every day Sangha we say Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nityam means one understanding is daily, regularly. Another understanding I heard was eternally. So eternally, so we are really, what we are doing here every day, day after day, is practicing for this eternal, experience of that relishing, serving Bhagavata and relishing it. So that's what Anubhajana also refers to here. Where it is constantly engaging in devotional service. So basically, it means that without a break, like there's no taking a break from devotional service or no vacation. I was hearing this, my spiritual master was explaining when he met his sisters to whom he was very close after many years. He was asked, so you have done all this. Of course, they were very understanding and appreciative of his path, the path he had chosen. But because it's conventional understanding that, okay, whatever you have done. So one question was asked by a sister, like, so when are you retiring? So Maharaj smiled, and he was he said his response was, I retired when I was 20. So it's been so then his sister, of course, she knew all that he had done in his life. So she really appreciated that response and smiled. So basically, Maharaj was saying there should be no understanding of taking a break. But also he explained that one can change their level of intensity depending on their personal situation. So one should not take a break from devotional service, because that is really what break means is like we are executing our duties in the Krishna consciousness, and then we say, okay, let us add a little bit of Maya, it's no harm. That is a slippery slope, and it's before you know it, we will be far away from the consciousness with which we were in the prior to this. So that's what the caution, Anubhajana, to constantly in all day-to-day activities, if to maintain Krishna consciousness and not take a break. But we can. What I heard was from senior devotees also is, if say we are in some intense service, say like we all have experienced like some Janmashtami or some major festival, or we have taken up some project and intense few period. After that, one need not taking a break means like say taking a retreat where one focuses on just hearing and chanting or just reading. Those are good ways to recharge, and further those type of activities will again strengthen our hearing and chanting and resolve to execute devotional service, service to Guru and Krishna with more vigor. And the break should not really break us, break our enthusiasm, break our desire to serve, slacken the desire to serve Guru and Krishna. So I know So we are nearing 8 o'clock. I just the next verse is really the falastuti for this whole narration of Puranjana Upakhana. Before going there, Prabhupada just mentions about Dhira and Veera. Just when there is any discrepancy in the verses, Prabhupada explains that both Dhira and Veera, although some versions have Veera, they both mean they don't. It doesn't change the meaning. So one who is struggling against Maya is a hero. So I just a very nice point Prabhupada mentions that we are really sometimes we hear devotees saying we're struggling, but really they are that's why the association of devotees is so glorious, because we are in the association of heroes. Because they are all struggling for the right reason. Otherwise, if you see in the material world, there are so many struggles going on, but then there's no connection to the transcendent. So it's a really shrama evahi kevalam, futility, struggle in towards futile end. So, so moving on to the next verse. I quickly try to cover this. This is just this is the falastuti. एतादध्यात्म परोक्षं गीतं देवर्षीणानगा या श्रवेत् या शृणुयात् सलिङ्गेन विमुच्यते. Translation: My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence, as described by great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. Purport: this material creation is a spirit soul's dream. Actually, all existence in the material world is a dream of Mahavishnu, as the Brahma Samhita describes. Yakaranarnava jale bhajati smayoga nidram ananta jagadanda saroma kupaha. This material world is created by the dreaming of Mahavishnu. The real actual platform is a spiritual world. But when the spiritual soul wants to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is put into this dreamland of material creation. After being in contact with the material modes of nature, the living entity develops a subtle and bronze body. When the living entity is fortunate enough to associate with Sri Narada Mahamuni or his servants, he is liberated from this dreamland of material creation and the bodily conception of life. So basically, in this verse, it's a Falastuti verse. So we see in many parts of Bhagavatam, we hear towards the end of Falastuti. Basically, it is to the result of hearing and reciting this each narration is given in the Falastuti. So here it is told when after hearing this, the living entity spiritual about the living entity spiritual existence. One who relates or listens to this will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. So I know we have all been listening to this for many weeks, and definitely, we would have experienced that even if it is a glimpse, the state of being liberated from bodily conception of life. In this regard, sometimes the question comes when practicing devotees, like we see these Falastutis, but it's not really happening fully. So the explanation given by senior devotees is the Falastuti really is stating the potency of the narration and reception of this narration. So when one the narrator or the listener based on the intensity with which one is doing the practice, accordingly the result is achieved. So one's faith should get strengthened to listen more and read and hear more of this pastime again and again, because it's told in Bhagavatam, it's clearly mentioned that one will be liberated from bodily conception of life. So the potency is definitely there. And when based on our receptivity and intensity and desire, we definitely can get full benefit of that potency. So it's interesting how, although the verse is really a falastuti, and that is explained in translation, in the purport, Prabhupada really talks about completely an additional thing. It talks about it's what we always see in Prabhupada's lectures also. He is trying to break the illusion. So he doesn't talk about the glory or the falastuti in the purport. He talks about that material creation is the spiritual dream. So basically, he's telling the existence material world is a dream of Mahavishnu, and we need to really come out of this dream world, the dreamland. So he's saying this living entity, because of his desire to imitate the Supreme Lord, is put into this dreamland of material creation. And one is fortunate enough to associate with Narad Mahamuni or servants, is liberated from this dreamland. So if you see, he's kind of really giving us the key to really get the full benefit that the Falastuti is mentioning, is really we need to snap out of our dream, and really and how to do that is by associating with great devotees who are sincere in their practice, and when we execute devotional service in the association of devotees, then we can be liberated from the dreamland of material creation. And basically, it is being freed from the bodily conception of life, which is really always what Prabhupada tries to remind us, that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. And our constitutional position is that of servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. And the way to the goal of life is to re-establish that connection, and the way to do that is through the process of executing the practices of devotional service, the Bhagavat Marg, particularly the 9 process of devotional service, starting with chanting and hearing. So that's what Prabhupada again reminds us in the Falastuti Shloka also. And basically the dream analogy. So like sometimes we hear life is but a dream. So many even materialists, because they don't have access to the transcendental knowledge, they may come to some like a perverted reflection of this understanding, that yes, life is a dream, but then how to get out of the dream that is given by getting access to transcendental knowledge through the association of devotees. So those were some of the points I wanted to discuss. One final thing is with regard to dreams. So really, like we see, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and in his line, like even Prabhupada, they all had dreams, but their dreams were that the spiritual nature of those dreams we can just reflect. Like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always he emphasized that Prithvi te achayati nagaradi gram sarvatra prachar haibe morana. So, so that was his not just a dream, but his prediction that it will happen, and that was fulfilled by Srila Prabhupada when he went to the Western world, and through that and established ISKCON. Now we see this dream of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is already begun becoming a reality. So, so the real so we need to understand what is what is the right dreams. Otherwise, what happens is we have heard this thing that just row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. So this conception is what most of the materialists, whatever difficulty happens, just keep rowing. Life is but a dream. So it helps one to moving in life, but it doesn't really connect to the transcendental knowledge. And in the absence of that, the whole life becomes wasted endeavor. So, but here, when we are having the right understanding, thanks to Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, we can, give meaning to our life and not just, just go through the motions of life, thinking it's just a dream. Although it is true, to some, like Prabhupada says, the material world is a dream of Mahavishnu. But then it is the dream of Mahavishnu is because the living entity desires separately from Krishna. But then the way to snap out of the dream is by re-establishing our connection with Krishna. So how to wake up from the dream? Like that's what our spiritual master does. And by following the orders of spiritual master, we can really be awakened from our dream. We see the bhajan Jeev Jago. So basically, the duty of the spiritual master and really of anybody who wants to give transcendental knowledge is to awaken the living entity, conditioned entity from the dream state of material existence. And that's why preaching preaching is so important that when where really preaching is also has the same falastuti that we see here, because what has happened in this whole narration is Narad Muni has helped Prachinivari realize his constitutional position and helped him engage in devotional service. So when we also preach, give this transcendental knowledge to anybody and help them understand their constitutional position and help them start on the path of bhakti, then definitely what this falastuti is promising will be, we will also receive that benefit. And one who is receiving the transcendental knowledge from us, they'll also experience that, what this falastuti is promising here. That is, they will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. And like Prachinavari, they will get the impetus to execute pure devotional service. So with that, I'll conclude today's presentation. Those were a few points. Please forgive me if I've spoken out of my, qualification, but I just wanted to share some of my reflections and realizations. If anybody has any thoughts or discussions or questions, we can pick it up now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Thank you very much for a very nice class, especially you emphasize the importance of Shravanam, Kirtanam and Smaranam. And you also mentioned that that would eventually help to increase our Krishna consciousness. So, it may not be overnight, but it will be steadily, but gradually it will happen. And also you emphasized the importance of association, being in association and executing devotional service. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Devotees, you may please unmute your line and share your comments or questions that you may have.
Any reflections on points mentioned in the report?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful sharing. There's really a lot of hope. I mean, you just covered one point of why don't get the benefit of what I'm trying to listen to or whatever it is, the Palashruti perspective. But yeah, it is a question of how much of involvement and how dedicated I am and committed. It's also very important. So it's not just hearing, but it is attentively listening. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, so just the potency is there, so that gives a lot of solace and helps us strengthen our own resolve to practice with more intensity. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Venugopal Prabhu, I have one question. Though, it is very clear that because the personal aspect of the Lord is quite visible and easy to understand, whereas many people, right, as you mentioned, they are always attracted by the impersonal aspect. Why it is so, Prabhuji? Is it because this is a beginning state, or it's complicated actually? But why people are still attracted towards that? Why not the simple, process?
Yeah, just my observation I can share. I definitely there may be explanations in terms of the desire of the soul also matters, but more from a anecdotally, what I've observed is really there's not much access to this higher knowledge. That's where, if you see, there is so much access to that impersonal knowledge. And when you hear those who have gone through that, like I know people who have dedicated some time to pursue that spiritual path, really it's very complicated, what they have heard and how they have come to understand that they are only God. So it's so difficult, but they have somehow convinced them that they are God, and the absolute truth is impersonal. One is access to higher knowledge. That's where gives us impetus that we need to reach out more, make this available out there, put it in the spiritual marketplace that people are shopping, where they're looking for different. People are always, and we should be there where they're looking, so that they have at least we give them that alternative. Again, choosing that is all the further steps, but we should be there where everybody else is there. The other is is really as you said, the loosening of that aham mameti, right? So the impersonal conception, one doesn't have, it is not, because there's no emphasis on establishing the personal connection. One can remain in their own dream, if you see, related to today's. So it seems more comfortable, like it convinces you that you are doing spiritual activity. It helps you think that you are on the right track, and also giving a false sense of that you are in control of your destiny, which is really what if you see in the higher conception of Paramatma and Bhagavan realization particularly, one has to give up that, and it is not easy. So that is where when we surrender to Guru and regularly hear this, that hard knot gets slackened, and that selfishness can slowly be removed. I'm speaking for myself. I can see how hard-hearted I am. So, although having access to this knowledge, thanks to only the association of devotees, there is some change of heart to at least practice this regularly. But when there is no such access and association, it is impossible. So that is where the caution of all the acharyas to against, because it is so close yet so far, because you have given up the material conception, you come to some sort of spiritual understanding of the soul, but then you get stuck at the impersonal understanding. That's an unfortunate situation, and that's why our acharyas particularly emphasize the association. So those are some thoughts, Prabhu. I don't know if I answered your question. Why? If anybody else has anything that they can share.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. I think you mentioned 2 points: lack of access. The other one is the false sense of controllership and proprietorship, which is too difficult to give up. And for one to come to the stage of the personalized worship, they have to give up this. So I think the second point, I believe, that's a big one. Though they get the mercy, but still it's difficult to give up those false sense of proprietorship and controllership. Thank you, Prabhuji. I think if there are no questions, we can end, Prabhuji, today's class. I think, Hare Krishna devotees, any other comments, reflections? Yes, Prabhuji, I think we can end it, Prabhuji.
Thank you all for your support.
Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगद्गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। Next devotees, I will be ending the Zoom session. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you again.
Thank you.